Hey guys, Bix Weir, roadshow.com, here with my good friend Andy Schectman, and we're laughing with each other. War's breaking out, the world's falling apart, silver's busting through 200-day moving averages, and then gold and silver get slammed. Andy, welcome to the new day, the same as the old day. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Bixie. Good to see you, brother. And it's crazy, but I guess when you take a step back and look at it, we were decisively through the 200-day moving average, both the 50 and the 200 this morning. And of course, 2440 on the 200-day moving average, bringing it down below it. Not surprising. Also not surprising, Bixie, because, I was looking this morning and saw just over 81 million ounces of gold or silver, rather, on the registered category on COMEX. And I divided that by 5,000. Came up with 16,267 contracts in open interest. And problem is that there's 31,930. So let me revise that. There's 81.33 million ounces in the registered category. So I divided that by 5,000, came out with 16,267 contracts worth of silver on COMEX. But the problem is that there's 31,990 contracts still open in open interest as of about an hour ago. So almost 16,000 contracts, short contracts, have to cover or be rolled over by tomorrow at the end of business. So when you see a move like this, realizing they busted it through the 200-day, realizing that bank like Bank of America was almost $1 billion underwater just today alone, I guess it makes sense. It's certainly aggravating, but if not, we're looking at a silver squeeze or prying silver out of the eligible category just to avoid a force majeure tomorrow.
Yeah. My take on COMEX in general, 99% of the trades and positions are held by a handful of banks that can do what they want. When there is deliveries, the vast majority of deliveries goes one out the like Bank of America door, in back through the JP Morgan door. The next day, next week, next delivery period goes the other way. The more I look at the COMEX, I've for a long time said all exchanges are 100% rigged. With the invention of computers and derivatives, there's no limit on how many shares you can dump on the market, how many contracts you can dump on the market. And that goes through in and out of all contracts. We are at a different space and time. The understanding of that simple fact that all markets are rigged, and the ability for us to, one, buy cheap silver. I mean, we love to bitch and moan about the slam downs in silver, but if you're interested in silver at all, especially if you're new and you haven't bought any yet, you love the market riggers. The market riggers are your best damn friend, because you're going to be able to load up on as much as you want at any of these prices. Now, if I was a hedge fund and I had access to $30 billion, I would buy all $30 billion at $24 silver, and it wouldn't move the price. It wouldn't move the price because the amount of derivatives traded on the COMEX every day, I think the average is 100,000 contracts, or between 100 and 200,000 contracts. That's what, 500 million ounces every day. It's so divorced from any kind of reality that, price, what does price mean? We got excited because I love looking at the TA, although I know in the back of my mind, TA means absolutely nothing. Other than the tech traders, by the definition of how they trade, every time the 200-day moving average is breached and held, that's the other thing. It's got to test the breach. It's got to backfill and any gaps, which there was a huge gap when it ran up to 25 something. I guess this might be just backfilling, but I always fall back on, I know they can click a mouse and set the price of silver to minus $40 if they wanted to. They did it with oil. They could do the same thing with silver. But where are we as far as on the retail side of the equation? Is there silver available right now? I mean, all this is fairly new. The war issues and the moving average issues being breached. It haven't been breached in 7 months, I think it is. Where are we with the physical availability of silver so that Road to Ruta members, Road to Ruta customers can call you and say, hey, I need some silver?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, and just to comment one thing, I think one of the things that's upsetting so many people is the counterintuitive nature. This was our moment. This is when it should happen. There's war, there's chaos, there's inflation, there's a Fed painted into a corner. It's broke through moving averages. And that counterintuitive nature, you know, if you've been at this as long as you and I have, you understand what it feels like, actually kind of like being a Minnesota Vikings football fan. You almost get there and then you get smacked down again. Same thing here. But look, the only way you can successfully manipulate a market over time, Bixie, is to push it in the direction it's going. And the demand for silver, for investable retail silver, is crazy. We had a record year last year. 97% of every order we did was in silver. Getting silver, you mentioned if you were a hedge fund. Well, I mean, if there's only 81.3 million ounces that's available to be delivered on COMEX, what happens when that's gone? If there's more contracts in open interest that could potentially stand for delivery right now, what happens when a hedge fund jumps on? You're talking up at the wholesale level, up at the COMEX level. In terms of retail level, it's been a constant challenge. It's you know, we're a U.S. Mint authorized reseller, one of only 24 in the world, and I have lots of Silver Eagles in stock, north of $8.50 over the price of silver. Never come back down. You know, I remember when you and I did an interview in December of 2020, right as the virus hit. If we go back to, for example, a month earlier, let's say you called me Thanksgiving, even a few weeks earlier, and say, hey, I want to buy a couple boxes of Silver Eagles, I would say to anyone back then, Thanksgiving 2019, hey, you're going to pay $3.19 over spot. We'll buy them back for $2.65 over spot. You know, roughly a 65-cent spread on there. 3-4 months later, February, March, April 2020, I would have paid you $11 over the price of silver, because the demand, just like that, had gotten so strong and the inability to source product had gotten so acute. Well, the premiums really have never come down too much on Silver Eagles, and all of the other sovereign coins have been really, really, really hard to get, where we have to pay 30, 60, 90, 120 days in advance. We bought a whole bunch of British sovereigns back at the end of January that we're just going to get delivery on in a week, maybe 10 days, because the UK Mint ran out of blanks, so they told us. But that money was paid up front and hedged and run logistics on for the better part of 2 months. And it's not easy any longer to have an inflow of product, because it's a constant battle between people who globally who are waking up to what silver has to offer and coming to the big wholesalers with large order requests. And so you end up in line, and the only way that you're going to get product as a company nowadays is to buy it well in advance, pay top dollar fully in advance, hedge it. If you can't hedge it, you're risking you go out of business before you even receive it. Run logistics on it, and that doesn't just mean watching it get across the Atlantic into customs, but then running logistics on armored cars or trucks to your vault, and then getting it and packaging it and sending it out through UPS. It's a big job nowadays. Never was this way. In fact, back in the day, I would have big distributors and their cohorts, the sovereign mints, would want to stage their products in my vault and just leave it in there. If you don't need it, don't worry about it. If we need it back, we'll pay to have it shipped out. Don't worry about it. Now, 6, 9, 12, 18 weeks, you got to pay in advance to get stuff. So it's tough. I think it's only getting tougher. And, you know, Rick Rule, a friend of mine, and I've always liked his wisdom. And he says something quite frequently. He just said it the other day, that 0.5% of the entire US public owns precious metals, or a 0.5% allocation to the whole financial matrix. From the Harvard Endowment Fund down to Joe Sixpack was almost verbatim what he said. He said in 1980, that number was 8%. And the average over the past 40 years is 2.5%. That's a 5-fold increase if we get there. If something like what we're seeing right now, or the Fed being backed into a corner and blaming inflation on Putin instead of all of the money that the Fed's been creating. If the world realizes that we're trapped and starts to just dedicate a little bit, a toe dip in the water to precious metals like that, it's gone. I'll give you a good example. You know, you've always told me that you like pre-1965 silver. My whole career, they call it junk because my whole career, which is 32 years long, 98% of it I would pay spot or even back a spot to buy large quantities from dealers and distributors. And then I would mark it up, you know, 30, 40 cents an ounce and sell it to the public. And they're paying just over spot. Right now, you're going to pay $5.75 or thereabouts over the price of silver, and it's hard as heck to get. And this is emblematic of what I think we'll see with all of the metals products, because here's an item that hasn't been produced since 1964. The public isn't selling it. Premiums are going up. It's no longer junk. It's anything but. In fact, next to Silver Eagles, it carries the highest premium of anything we sell. That is what's going to happen with everything as people wake up. And you don't have to be even half blind to see, in a world where assets are so inflated and price discovery is so difficult, that there's supreme value in something like silver with the duality in demand, industrial, monetary, thanks to you and Wall Street Silver and everyone else who is screaming silver. There is a monetary renaissance globally, not just here in North America, everywhere. We're all competing for the same small stash of product. Before it's all said and done, Bixie, it will define this marketplace, the inability to source it readily. And I just want people to know that when I say this, I'm not talking today or tomorrow. I can get you stuff right now, but it's way harder than it ever was. And when I draw this linear path out into the future, I see it nearly impossible to get. And it wasn't too many years ago in 2008, for 6 months, I don't care who you were, you couldn't find 1 ounce of silver anywhere. And all the mints were shut down in the refineries in 08 when the price fell from 21 to 9. You would think that there'd be supply falling from the sky, but it was the opposite of that. It was COMEX engineered, everything was gone like that. So when I say to people, this market will be defined by an inability to source product, I am not talking my book. I am simply saying that if I had to bet, if I had a gun to my head, before this is all said and done, whatever event triggers the awakening by the people that the dollar is a Ponzi scheme and that the investments are over levered, and when they correct and find equilibrium in the economy, and they're going to notice silver and gold as an alternative, as an escape hatch. It'll probably be too late, but it'll push prices up higher than people think, and it will obliterate the supply. So anyways, in the retail world, that is my biggest concern, that getting supply will be problem number one for a company like mine.
Well, it is, we saw it play out last year, January, February timeframe. A big hedge fund called Private Advisors Group was looking for, we don't know the exact number, but in the range of 200 million ounces of silver, which you might think that's a massive amount of silver, which it is, although on the COMEX, that's not even days worth of trading. But what they did is they went in, and we have all the documentation, they went into SLV and they bought 200 million shares of SLV in the first quarter of last year, forcing the banks and their authorized participants to put physical silver into SLV during the first quarter of last year. And voila, they ended up leaving that position and taking most of that silver with them. So they knew if they went to retail dealers, they couldn't get all that silver. They knew if they went to the COMEX, they probably wouldn't be allowed to take off 200 million ounces. But through the delivery part of SLV, which is 50,000 shares, you can get 50,000 ounces of silver if you're dealing with the right broker that doesn't kick you out of their stable, like JP Morgan kicked me out when I asked the question, if I got a bunch of people and bought 50,000 shares, could you guys do the delivery? And they kicked me out of their bank.
Well, 200 million ounces is 2.5 times what is left for in the registered category on COMEX. So going to COMEX, you would wipe out the entire registered category. Now, I don't know what's left in the eligible category. You probably do, but that's silver that's spoken for, that has a warrant attached to it, that isn't for sale. Now, I don't know why. I could beat my head against the wall why the people who have this metal in the eligible category don't pull it out. And
I know.
why is it then?
It's SLV inventory.
Well, maybe that makes sense. That makes
Already
sense.
spoken for, yeah.
And when you talk about the SLV repatriation, Butler talks about that a lot, where he says that the banks are able to pull it out and not have the same filing requirements that they do by pulling it out of COMEX. So it gives them a cover or anonymity. And you have to be what's called an authorized participant, I believe, in order to pull out a basket, which is a huge amount. And before that ever started running out, they would stop the ability to get stuff out. Bottom line is that when you look at the numbers and you look at how the amount of the level of interest that could be attracted to silver, one hedge fund like this, 200 million ounces, would blow up COMEX.
Mhm.
So, by a factor of 2.5, almost 3. So are we really close? Today, if they didn't push it down through the moving averages, and tomorrow at the end of business, when it is the first delivery delay and everyone stood for delivery, could we have seen a force majeure? Yeah, sure. I would have bet against it just because they're always able to pull a rabbit out of their hat. But what it does tell you is that we are closer than we've ever been, really, to seeing this type of an issue. And I think that, to not understand that, to not realize it, to see the turn on a dime when nothing's changed. In fact, the fighting is every bit as strong this afternoon as it was last night when it started in the Ukraine, as an example, or Biden's speech wasn't that fantastic that made everyone think, oh, everything's okay right now. We have to stop thinking in terms of minutes and being reactionary. We need to be prepared for what's coming down the pike. And that's why I say it will be difficult to get product, because I see it coming down the pike. I see more people waking up to the logic of hard assets, of money, because I see a Federal Reserve that is out of options. And when they talk about tightening, are they going to tighten into all of this geopolitical strife as energy prices and gasoline prices, as we're being told we're going to have to brace for it, they're going to the moon? What are we going to do? Are we going to tighten then and really hurt the consumer, really hurt the economy? No, they're not. They're going to keep printing and print. So when that becomes a realization, I think, a mass realization, the bond market's bigger than the Fed, and the market is bigger than the ability of the cartel to hold things down. Getting it now before it's blatantly obvious to everyone should be important. And I'll say one more thing. My phone hasn't stopped ringing all day because people are reactionary and they buy when they're nervous and scared. And I should have done that. You can't do that, and the Titanic proved that. They didn't build enough life rafts because the boat would never sink. Mm-hmm. You have to take some time and think about what could happen down the road. Where will we be with the dollar in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years? What's it going to look like? And I think if you don't own some silver right now, I think you're making a big mistake. Not only because if you're fully invested in dollars, you're destined to go broke, but it's really getting hard to get. And if you've been waiting for that run in Bitcoin or whatever it may be to make the switch, I think you need to realize that pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. Take a little off the table right now and get it while it's available. Like you were saying, it is available today, but much like junk silver, which is becoming literally unobtainium, what will it be tomorrow?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I tell my people who are both crypto and silver lovers, try to maintain that 50-50 relationship. That's what I recommend. Have half of it in silver and half of it in the cryptos you like, and the cryptos ran crazy. And those who did that feel good about their position. Cryptos are getting slammed just like silver got slammed because of Janet Yellen or Jerome Powell clicked the mouse in the basement of the U.S. Treasury and made it go down. One thing I would like to talk about on as far as the Bank of America silver leased position that was exposed, Ted Butler showed it, but it's the OCC really where the data can be seen very clearly. $18 billion at the end of the third quarter, Bank of America. These are all, and the amazing thing that I don't think Ted has talked about it, but that's 800 million ounces of silver that was leased. The lease term can be seen in that data. It's 99% of that lease term is less than 1 year. And that was all put on last year so that Bank of America could get, $20 billion or so of basically free financing, because the lease rates on silver are like tiny. And they leveraged that up to 200 million thinking, oh yeah, we got all this money to get us through COVID. What they didn't think about is, can we get the silver to pay back JP Morgan? all these leases are 1 year only. So when you look at the COMEX and have these gigantic open positions that in the last day or last 2 days before get rolled over and rolled over, I would say the majority of those are Bank of America, but not because they want to, but because they have to roll over the position, other than delivering it, which they don't have the metal, or taking a hit, taking a financial hit. The whole reason they did this crazy silver lease program is to get really cheap money at a time when cheap money and any money was a problem during COVID.
Right.
So as far as urgency, and this is why I wanted to get you on. You have had situations where you'd go through a weekend and it was insane. Everybody was buying silver and ordering from you, and you put your neck out on the line because part of that orders you were taking weren't hedged yet, and you had to wait till Monday. Are you still going to do that? Are you still going? Let's just say the world goes crazy and silver jumps $3 tomorrow because of so many obvious reasons. Would you take orders even after you've already fulfilled what you have in inventory, orders that you wouldn't be able to hedge? Or would you just say, oh shit, I can't take orders anymore?
Well, the way that I do it, and taking a lesson, if we go back to the silver squeeze, on Friday nights, I will take a position into the weekend. I will go long, let's say 20,000, 30,000 ounces or whatever it may be. That particular weekend, we went long 55,000 ounces because we knew something was going on. And what I mean by that is we bought 11 COMEX contracts long at the end of trading on Friday so that I could buy stuff. Since the price is fixed, I could buy or sell stuff on Friday and Saturday and Sunday afternoon that would be covered. And when we got a phone call early that morning, as all of the companies were shutting, I was getting phone calls Friday night saying, you see APMEX and you see all these companies, they're shut their websites. They're saying they're out of product and they're not taking any orders. It made it look like they were out of product, but what had really happened was that they had outkicked their hedge. What I mean by that is this: so we were long. My trader would call me and say, hey, you got an interview with Bix or whatever. Is there something I should know about? He said, that weekend, I'm going to buy 11 contracts. So we were 55,000 ounces long into the weekend. By Saturday morning, after we're getting these calls, Friday night, that all these companies, their websites online were shut down. Saturday morning, I get a call at 5:30 in the morning from my head trader, frantically out of breath, saying, you sold 90,000 ounces last night. You're 35,000 ounces naked, exposed to the open Sunday night. I almost threw up when I heard that, because they were talking about gapping up $10, which would be a $350,000 loss like that. And if you know anything about Murphy, you don't try to outsmart the market, because every time you do, Murphy will get in there and you'll double what you would have otherwise lost. And you can't speculate with the business. It's one thing to do it personally. You speculate with the business, you're out of business. Ask Hannes Tolving about that. If you speculate the wrong way, you're dead. And so as a result, I said, for the first time ever, shut it down. And that was a Saturday morning. We stopped taking orders. So to answer your question, we're entering that period of time, Bixie, where volatility, I think, is going to be something you're going to see a lot of. And I don't know if we were to breach what we had hedged by a significant amount, I don't think I would take that risk. I don't think anyone would take that risk. I think it's very foolish, because the margins in this business are razor thin. They really are. If you make 1% or 1.5% on a small sale, or a fraction of 1% on a large sale, you can't risk speculation on silver. It moves 20 cents, you've lost everything. So in a roundabout answer, the answer is no. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, we do take orders that aren't hedged if it's an order that's manageable. But you get into a big order, someone wants to buy $1 million worth, and you're past your hedge, you're out of your mind to take that. You're risking yourself to unlimited amounts of loss and the inability to deliver. And that's reputation in an industry. In this industry is everything. And that's the last thing I would ever want to do, would be to call someone up and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it, after the prices ran away and they thought they got in at the right time. So no, I wouldn't.
Okay, excellent. Good to know. And um, everybody listening to this, don't get caught up in when this shit happens. It's going to happen again, and it's going to get ugly. It might be because they declare war. I heard China was threatening Taiwan. When the back's turned, it's like, oh shit, you got to look over there. It's like whack-a-mole these days on reasons for silver to be volatile and disruptive to the system. And clearly, the powers that be that control the economic system, the Treasury, U.S. Treasury, and the Fed are in there manipulating the prices of gold and silver. And they, at some point, I don't think they'll get beat out of the game, but they are going to have to give up the game. Everybody knows it already. Putin, of all people, our mortal enemy, so says Joe Biden, knows exactly what's going on in the gold and silver markets. He went to the GATA conference in the early 2000s, and Putin in like 2002, 2003, sitting there holding the bar of gold, basically screaming to the world, we know what the United States is doing when they rig gold. And if you know about gold rigging, you know about silver rigging. Can you imagine if Vladimir Putin held up a bar of silver and says, the US is the most corrupt markets of all markets, go buy this stuff, stick it under your bed, and all you Russians around the world, take care of your financial future. And I'm just telling everybody else who wants to take care of the future, go buy silver, stick it under your bed, and you'll be well off, if not rich, when all this crap falls apart that the US is involved in using computers and derivatives to rig the price of silver.
Yeah, and again, people just need to realize that the counterintuitive nature of everything you say makes so much sense. And if you look at it, yeah, it just makes so much sense. I get it. Counterintuitive price action is what makes people beat their head against the wall. And it's hard to play the long game. It's hard to sit back and trust your gut when your senses are saying you're an idiot. I do. I've been trusting my gut and your advice for as long as I can remember, since I was 19 years old. And I think it's been a hard, arduous, long haul, but ultimately, I think we're getting very close to the end game. You look at a country like Russia; they have more gold in reserves than they do dollars. They're for the first time, and you're seeing countries move away from the U.S. dollar. You're seeing big money move away from the U.S. dollar, and where are they moving to? They're not moving into other currencies. They're not moving into equities. They're moving into gold and silver, and it's the manipulation by the big banks that allows them to run cover into this. So yeah, the advice that you're giving is so sound and so smart. And I, for one, understand how difficult it is to be misdirected by price and to be let down by the price action when we think and we see that it should be doing better. Ultimately, it will. It has to. And the bottom line is you have an asset that is massively needed on so many levels, and it's becoming harder and harder and harder to get. And you don't have to look any further than what you said about 5 minutes ago, when the hedge fund tries to buy 200 million ounces, which is 3 times what is available, almost 2.5 times what is available to be delivered on COMEX. I mean, how close are we to that moment where the headwind that we are facing with COMEX becomes a tailwind, where they flip-flop and they just let it run because the big banks like JP Morgan have amassed so much? I heard from Ted that Bank of America actually leased the gold from JP Morgan, then sold it back to them, but they're still on the hook for the lease. They wanted that to make the easy money, that they could cover that short position at lower prices. And so when
gold
you see
or the silver?
The silver.
I think they might have leased gold as well, is what Ted was saying.
So maybe that's what it was. It was an email conversation I was having with my dad this morning, and I said, well, that doesn't make sense. I said, why would they sell it back to me? He says, well, so that they could make easy money and buy it back later. The bottom line is the games that are being played by these banks are very, very risky games, and you can see the incentive that they have, and you can see there's 800 million reasons why they're going to try to mitigate the rise. But at some point, the board members are going to have to say, what the hell are you guys doing? Get out of this market, go long, stop shorting, stop risking everything. And that, Bear Stearns went bankrupt because silver went to 21 who's to say it can't happen to Bank of America? But anyways, bottom line is, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. Simply to say, Bixie, I think we're getting closer than we ever have to the advice that you've been giving out for so long, really starting to accentuate itself in price movement that is long overdue. And we'll start to real quickly understand why it's so important to own precious metals when things around us start to break apart in the face of perhaps rising interest rates, or if not massive inflation. One or the other, we're going to have to pay our bill.
Absolutely. And that's why we've become such good friends for so long that I trust Miles Franklin with my customers. And that's the most important thing to me. And he has done them so well. I mean, he takes care of the Road to Ruta people like no other. And I love that about him. And he is the sponsor of our Roadshow, by the way, which kicks off on March 5th in Sonoma. I'm looking forward to this. I don't know if 2 people or 2,000 people will show up, somewhere in the middle probably, but we're going to be talking about silver. We'll be talking a lot about censorship and freedom of speech and things that America holds dear. And we'll talk some cryptos, and we'll meet like-minded people, and that's the most fun, and sing some songs about it. So, Andy, are you coming to a show?
I'll be there in San Diego and Phoenix. So I wanted to make it to Sonoma and LA, but I'm tied up with other things.
Okay.
I will just miss the LA by one day. I think I'm going to fly into LA, see some business associates and some friends, rent a car, head to San Diego, head to Phoenix, and fly back out after that.
Sounds great. Sounds wonderful. If you guys want to get in on the shows, go to roadruta.com, Roadshow right at the top there. Shows tickets and where we'll be hanging out. Andy, how can people buy silver from you today before it gets too crazy?
Mention Bix Weir Road to Ruta at info@milesfranklin, info@milesfranklin.com. Mention Bix Weir Road to Ruta. I promise that we will give your listeners the best price on silver. We have specials that we will offer just to your people, but we'll send you an inventory. We'll reach out to you. And I personally will make sure that your listeners are getting the best price and the best service in the country. We will sell you product that's in stock. And if it's not in stock, you'll know about it. It'll be your choice as to whether or not you want to wait a few days or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it may be. We'll be upfront about it. But we certainly take as serious as a heart attack the Road to Ruta listeners always have. The last person in the world I ever want to disappoint is you, Bix. And I appreciate you trusting me with your listeners and your readers. You don't write too much anymore, so we'll call it your listeners. I still read the stuff that you write once in a while and all the stuff that you did, but for your listeners, you will get the best price in the country, personalized service. We're licensed, we're bonded. We've never had a customer complaint. You won't be the first, I promise you. So info@milesfranklin, mention Road to Ruta, we'll make sure you get the best price.
And I highly suggest do it as soon as possible. You don't want to get mixed up in the melee of silver shortages, war breaking out, 200-day moving averages penetrated again and again and again. So do it today. Andy, thank you for your time, and we will see you out on the road.
I'll see you on the road, brother. Stay well until.